Well, I'm not able to get into UEN today for some reason, but I've got the agenda memorized. So I can't get into the website. So what I want you to do then is just make sure that you let me know if you have questions or if I'm missteering us on the agenda. I think the first thing on the agenda is to go over. Well, can someone read the agenda and tell me what the first thing is? Is it the module 9, module 11 prep stuff? Oh, it's where are we with UCARE? Yeah, okay. So, and you can read the highlights there of where we are with UCARE that Becky put in when she prepared the agenda. We are planning on one of the things that happens with the evaluation, and this won't involve you or your teachers, but one of the things that happens is the grant period actually ends in August, but all of the evaluation stuff isn't due until November, and so we're trying to figure out within the budget how we can pay people to finish up all the evaluation stuff. There won't be any new data collection. That's primarily just to find out a way to make sure we've got personnel, Becky and me and Joan, to make sure that we're able to get the evaluation reports in a timely manner to meet federal requirements. And it looks like we've got some good solutions to that at this point. But one of the other questions a lot of people have is, what do we do with the treatment sites to whom we promised that we would have access to all these training videos and materials and so on for them? And it looks like the solution is going to be that Utah State University will host a site off of my web page to make sure that these things are made available to your districts, to other school districts and so on, other charter schools that are interested in doing this training. And then simply as part of my service load from the university, because I'm required to do a certain amount of service in the community with schools that I'd be willing to come down without additional charge to the treatment schools, being able to provide some of that training if you wanted me. But we would also hope that in many situations, the local facilitators and the treatment teachers would be able to take that training to the control schools in their own school districts and help us do some coverage that way. So those are part of the plans. With that, if you have any further questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. I'm not seeing any questions, but so we can go on to the next item of the agenda, which I believe is Module 11. Oh, finally got in. Okay. Trying to get my windows organized here so I can kind of keep track of what's going on. Thanks, Michelle, for keeping me up on the agenda. I'm finally in now where I can track it myself. Appreciate you doing that for me. Okay, so teachers should be working on strategies. Data will be collected at the end of the year just like last year. So remember what we did is we sent out a survey to ask how confident, how much people were implementing, how confident they were in that implementation and so on. So that's the kind of data we're talking about there. In addition, we do watch the videos, and we'll talk about that a little later. We do watch the videos along with using the dig, having the dig next to us to find evidence on our own based on what we see on those, that strategies are being implemented correctly and so on. So yes, those teachers should continue to be working on the strategies that we've taught. As you know, we made the decision after December not to include any new strategies, but just to simply shore up the strategies we already taught. So going back, reviewing those, looking at the materials Becky has provided, such as the handbook, going back to videos and so on, that's going to be important to continue to do. Next, teachers should now have their SD cards back and should be planning the last video recording. Instructions were previously sent by Becky on what we want on that recording. We just really want teachers and students to give us their reflections about what they did with their service learning projects, with their reading to serve projects. And again, the whole idea here is, teachers are permitted to produce that video as much as they want. If they want to write scripts, backgrounds, have handouts, show and tell, do whatever they want, they're welcome to do that, but they don't have to. It can just be the teacher reflecting openly and the students just reflecting openly without any scripting or anything like that if they want. But we also would permit teachers to do production on that so that they feel like we can get a real flavor of what it is that happened in the product and how different literacy skills were applied in that in particular, and what some of the outcomes were of those projects. So that's a choice that's left up to the teachers in conversations with you. And then look to the dig for the guidance. We do look at that dig very carefully when we analyze the videos. We always have it right next to us. We decide on this video, what are the elements of the dig that we know we'll find evidence for on this one. And then we focus on those. Obviously, we're not going to find evidence on any of these videos that you're doing what you should, as far as that you're doing what we expect, as far as identification is concerned, which is one of the dig guides. But we can make some judgments on grouping, for example, based on what we see. And we can make some judgments about content levels based on what we see. And we can make some judgments about implementation of a specific strategy. So those are the kinds of things that we will typically look for depending on the video. Any questions on that? Okay, well then let's go to Module 11. And you have a copy of all the Module 11 materials available to you in the PowerPoint. On the Canvas side, on the Canvas page. Now, the actual video that I did here at Utah State Office of Education is still in preparation, so that's not ready to be downloaded yet, but we have provided you with the PowerPoint slides and the PowerPoint script. You should be able to access both if in your view you choose the Notes menu. So the view that you want to view this with is the notes page, and then you'll have the script also for the video. The actual video itself, and again, we're only doing one video. If I remember correctly, it was 13 minutes long, and so you can look for that to be that, and that'll give you a lot of time to do discussion, to coach the teachers through on other issues such as their service learning project and so on. So what you'll see through this video is it's focused on extension menus. This was one of the things where teachers expressed less confidence in using extension menus than in other areas. Extension menus was originally presented in video number 2, in module number 2, where we talked about the infrastructure for differentiation, and that extension menus are one thing that teachers can use within their classroom very easily, very naturally, to provide differentiation opportunities to their students. After teachers completed the recent survey and indicated that extension menus was an important aspect, was something that they wanted to know more about, one of the things we did is looked at all the strategies that we have taught and determined that extension menus really belongs as a strategy within the reading to learn quadrant of the world-class reader model. So if you look at what the goals of the world-class reader model are and the reading to learn component, then you'll see that this is in fact something that gives students an opportunity to do additional research, to extend beyond things that are provided in class, and to pursue personal interests using their literacy skills. It's a fairly simple way of going about doing that, much less complex than some of the other ways that we might have got into during this thing, such as the personal investigation model, which was our original plan to teach you. But this, I think, is a much more simplified way of approaching that, and will certainly satisfy the needs of many of your advanced readers. And if you're interested in more information about something like the personal investigation plan, we can visit on that separately if you have teachers who'd be interested in that, but that's not something that's required anymore. So this is really, for now, kind of the key strategy under reading to learn, along with, well, this is the key strategy we've got going now in reading to learn. Though it's certainly problem-based learning, PBL, not community problem solving or service learning, but PBL itself certainly has some overlap with the reading to learn quadrant. So what I do here is introduce the teachers to first of all, most of the extension menus you see published, and there are some very good extension menus. If you want your teachers to take a look at more extension menus, if you look at the catalog of Prufrock Press, you're welcome to have those teachers take a look at some of those and where they relate to literacy. I think it would be all right for you to have them spend some of the money the schools get for materials from this grant, some of the few dollars, to purchase some of those extension menus from Prufrock Press or other publications. The best ones I've seen are, quite frankly, from Prufrock Press that relate to literacy. They have some great ones for mathematics, for science, and so on. Unless you can look at some of their samples from those and see that, yes, there is a literacy component here in terms of the research they're having them do, the reading for information that they're having to do, the informational reading, we wouldn't be as supportive of using the money to buy that. But if you can justify it based on the literacy skills required to complete any one of those things, the Prufrock Press extension menus are a really valuable resource, I think, that your teachers might want to look at if they feel like they don't have time to write their own. Just about the one problem you have with the Prufrock Press extension menus is just about every one of them I've seen have 9 components. And that might deliver the message that all extension menus have to have 9 choices, and that's simply not the case. The 9 comes from another version of extension menus called Think-Tac-Toe. And Think-Tac-Toe is just a specific kind of extension menu that uses the 3x3 spatial construction to give the options. But there are certainly others, and one of the slides specifically shows different ways that you can lay out your extension menu for your kids so that they can see that there are multiple options for how you, depending on the grade level of the children, their experience with extension menus, the topics that you're dealing with and their understanding of those topics, how you might provide extension menus. One of my favorite extension menu users was a second grade teacher here in Cache County School District. She said the very first extension menus that I introduced to my third graders, they have 3 options. They just can't deal with more choices than that to begin with, and that's just fine. And if you decide at a lower grade that I need to start with just 2 options, then that's just fine. You start with what makes sense for your grade level, for how familiar are the students with those. The third grade teacher, by the end of the year, because she used extension menus so aggressively throughout the year and continually, her students by the end of third grade were able to make choices eventually from a 3x3 grid extension menu, but from a 9-choice extension menu. But there's no expectation that any teacher here who chooses to use extension menus in this project would be expected to get their students up to a 3x3 or a think-tac-toe, which is the 3x3. What I then do in this slide presentation is introduce the teachers to the typical kinds of bases that teachers use, writers use for creating extension menus. Those include the learning modalities, multidisciplinary curriculum, and multiple intelligences. So you take a look at the learning modalities. Typically, we talk about visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, tactile kinesthetic. Now, the research on learning styles is really going in a direction that the populace, teachers in general and the populace are having a hard time accepting. And that's that it turns out that teaching to specific learning modules, to identifying students as being dominated by a particular learning modality, and then trying to teach specifically to that learning modality simply does not result in very great changes as far as achievement is concerned. I think if you're interested in pursuing the research on this, the one research study that really challenges that right now the best is a study by Robert Sternberg based on his triarchic theory that shows that when you focus teaching to advanced high school students, you teach an accelerated AP course, like an AP psychology to students based on the different intelligences that he defines in the triarchic model, that in fact achievement is affected by those in a certain amount of way. But in general, the learning modality research isn't real positive based on what we tend to believe can happen because of that. And that's primarily because no one should ever really be pigeoned into being one kind of learner. That's just simply not the way our brains are. Our brains are much more complex than that and open to much more different kinds of learning. And ultimately, because of the way schools are structured, everyone has to address the visual verbal learning style and the auditory verbal learning style. You just can't escape that. So what we need to be doing also is preparing our students for success in higher education and so on, because those are the styles that dominate there. But still, I think it still makes for a useful way of getting some variety into our extension menus. So one of the things I've done, if you'll look at the tabs for the different, for Module 11, you'll see that there are a lot of different sample extension menus, and there is one for modalities. And what I did is the modalities is based on kindergarten, and the multidisciplinary is based on a first grade. The multiple intelligence is third grade. The oral language storytelling is fourth grade. The houndstooth is fifth grade. And then there's a final one that I didn't write that you're going to have, the teachers are going to be participating in, that applies a sixth strategy, and you don't have to do sixth grade for that one. You can do whatever grade your teachers want to do. But I tried to give an example at each grade level as we move up the grade levels with different modalities, and also to show different kinds of configurations so that they get the idea that a 3x3 is not the only kind of configuration that is appropriate for using, doing extension menus. Any questions you have along the way here are appreciated also. So go ahead and pop those in as you want. So each time on each slide, when it talks about a multidisciplinary curriculum or a modality, there'll be a sample learning module for them to take a look at. And it's probably going to be a good idea, either communicate with your teachers to make sure that they print those off before they come to the training, or you might want to print those packets off for them when they come to the training so they've got them readily available for themselves as they're watching the video. So you'll see a multidisciplinary one, you'll see multiple intelligences one, and the multiple intelligences one just uses 2 cells, for example. It doesn't use all 9 intelligences. Just trying to, again, deliver the message that you don't have to use everything fully to get to that 3x3 construction. You can use extension menus flexibly. Then the next examples of extension menus draw on strategies we have used specifically within this project. Specifically, they will look at oral language storytelling, houndstooth, and Jacob's ladder. One of the things you want to make sure that when your teachers come to this training that they bring with them is to bring their Jacob's ladder book so they have access to those ladders and those ladder descriptions at the beginning of the book to help them use those to try and construct an extension menu on their own. As a group, as a small group, I mean, not on their own. So there's a storytelling one that's related to an information unit on sharks that you'll be able to say to use storytelling that extends beyond. There's another one based on houndstooth and a 5th grade curriculum. I mean, that would actually be 4th grade curriculum. K1, 2, 3, yes, 4th grade, because I know that's a Utah history one based on the whole concept of pioneers that the houndstooth one is based on. And I think that is a 3x3 one. Let me just look to see if remind myself. Nope, it's just a 6 one. It's just a 2x3 because there are 6 houndstooth values. So those are the essentials as far as the examples of extension menus are concerned. Then the slides go into more practical considerations. Then the Jacob's Ladder one is I want the teachers to try and construct their own as a small group under your guidance to use the different kinds of ladders and different locations on the ladders to construct their own 3x3. I didn't do a sample one of those, but for your purposes, if you want to see a sample one just to make sure that you think you're on the right track, would you let me know, and then I'll throw together one of those. I'll put together Jacob's Ladder one, on some topic related that would show you how Jacob's Ladder goes, just so you get a feel for what one might look like with Jacob's Ladder. It's one I would prefer you not show to the teachers, so that that instead you use it as a coaching tool for yourself to better understand what that might look like, so that then you can guide the teachers better through creating a Jacob's Ladder extension menu. One of the things then there's a slide that talks about the use of the middle space in the 3x3 construction, or any space on any construction is a free space where once students have had the opportunity to get used to extension menus and what extension menu products look like, that they can then be given sometimes a choice to design their own. So there's a slide that shows them, how they might do that. Who should use extension menus? There's some discussion there then about how you use extension menus in the classroom for students who need additional challenge. So there's a slide that talks about those different groups. Okay, I'll get together a sample for everyone, and I'll just stick that in the facilitator thing. But I want you to, I'm hoping that you'll kind of reserve that as just a coaching thing for you, and that you'll help the teachers work through that, permit the teachers to work through that slide, that activity, um, without necessarily looking at that exemplar, but by looking at the ladder charts. So students who've already mastered materials that you're about to teach. So extension menus can be used with those kids. Students who master the material after only some teaching. So they might do some of the practice and then go to the extension menus. Whereas students who've already mastered it probably do no practice, and you'd immediately go to an extension menu. Students who finish assignments early would be another. And then students whose parents have requested additional challenge. This is evidence that your teachers are trying to provide that challenge, that they have those extension menus available. And then there's a slide that teaches that shows the teachers that you have to teach the students who are doing extension menus certain behavioral expectations, including the whole idea of they need to work independently or with a small group, if the small group is permitted by the teacher, or if the extension menu activity suggests a small group. Students need to be taught what to do if they need help on the extension menu idea that they're working on, but the teacher's not available to give that help. Then what do they do? And the number one suggestion is that they then refer to the anchor activities that the teacher might have set up in the room. The whole idea that they don't draw attention to themselves, and that they produce high quality work that they can be proud of. One of the things that your teachers may wonder is, well, how do I implement these extension menus with students? And so you might want to spend a little bit of time just kind of coaching them through the idea of how you might sit down with a student and negotiate. And it's really a simple situation of you sit down with a student, show them the extension menu, show them their options, talk about, the kind of work that would be done with each, and then the student just, circles one or puts an X in it. They can put an X or an O in it, whatever, and agreeing to do that work, and then sign it. One of the powers of extension menus, depending on what you as a teacher want to do, is you can just have a student can just do one of the activities, and not have to do multiple activities. Or you can challenge a student to try and do 3 in a row, to try and stretch them to do things that not only that they like to do and are familiar with, but also challenge them to learn to express themselves in ways other than what their preferences are. So a lot of ways that you can use extension menus and negotiate with students how it is they might participate with an extension menu. Are there any questions about the slides? And if you want to, again, the actual video isn't up yet. Jerry's working on that as fast as he possibly can. Just because of the way schedules work, we weren't able to record that until a week ago today. So it usually takes him a little longer than that. So as soon as he's got that ready, we'll get that up, and we'll let you know. But if you have a training scheduled with your teachers before, then you're welcome to simply go through the slides, read the script with them, and use that as your means of doing that training. Any questions on Module 11 and the materials that are available there? The question has been asked, will the facilitator training video be posted online as well? Yes, and Jerry, we're making a recording of that right now, and that will be posted. Usually it's usually the next day that Jerry makes that available to us, and we're able to get that up. So you ought to be able to look at that tomorrow, or other facilitators who weren't able to attend can get that, or you can look at it to review the things I discussed here. Any other questions about Module 11? If they occur to you, that's okay. Let's go on to coaching tips for now. Um, Treatment fidelity, GoPro camera videos. I was a little cavalier last training when I said, well, we look at the GoPro videos. It's a much more complicated process than looking at the videos and say, oh, look, they're not doing this or doing that. We actually use the dig very carefully. I've described the process. We actually take a look at a few of the videos first to say, okay, what are we going to be able to tell from this video? And we only evaluate the things that we know are going to be able to tell. One of the things that the thing that I expressed last time was my concern that looking at the videos, we had only 60% of the teachers using advanced materials. Well, that means only 40% aren't, which means we're on our way, but we want to raise that. One of the things I didn't tell you is that 81% of the teachers were actually using the strategy that we wanted them to display in that video correctly. And so, that's pretty good. And there are some other things going on within the project, some communications. We had some of the communications and worry that people had been communicating about the service learning project that I let influence me last time when I gave primarily a negative message. I apologize for that, for anything that may have contributed to your stress or the teacher's stress. So yes, we do use the GoPro videos, but those are not the only thing we use, and we analyze those carefully as a team so that we're feeling like we've seen the same thing. We watch them carefully, and the only concern that came from those videos was the content one was at 60%, whereas the strategy is like up to 80%. So I should have shared that information with you. Also, comments on the discussion boards and exit tickets. So we know, for example, from comments on exit tickets and discussion boards and personal emails that people are still kind of anxious about the service learning project. So that's something in terms of your coaching, again, to let them know that it can be quite simple. It does not have to be something big and dramatic that changes the world. It could be something that can go on within a single classroom of something we need to change in our classroom, something that we need to change around our school. So the teacher can make it as big or as small as the teacher wants to make it. And then we also have the assessments that we do, the surveys that we send out to teachers, we use those. The assessments that we use from the pre and post test, and those kinds of informations. Now, one of the things on the assessments that we received some communication about is that teachers would like feedback on the ratings they are receiving. As indicated in the permission letter, the informed consent letter, teachers were informed that none of these materials we gather will ever be used for individual teacher evaluation. That's part of the agreement that we have to do in order to get what's called Institutional Review Board, IRB review. So we can't come back to a teacher and say to that one teacher, based on the video evidence, you're having trouble with this. We can't do an individual teacher assessment on that and share that with you as a facilitator or especially with their administrators. All we can do is give aggregate data. That's what was promised in those informed consent letters. However, you are welcome from the coaching standpoint to go in and do observations if the teachers want them. And then through the coaching model, that student-centered coaching model that we've talking about how it is the teacher's implementation is affecting an individual student, and together come up with solutions. In other words, the coaching model we're using is not the student-teacher evaluative model that says, if I were you, I would have done this, or if I were you, I would have done that. That's a top-down kind of thing. But if you're having a discussion that says, tell me what you were thinking when you did that, how might we address this particular student's needs better? What are some ideas that you have? What have you tried? Tell me more about that. What are some other things we might try? And you work together on that. That's the kind of thing that we really want our teachers, your discussion with the teachers to focus on, based strongly on the developmental implementation guide, so that's something that you always have with you as far as those discussions are concerned. And you start where that teacher is and say, you know, you're doing a great job here at level 2, and that's acceptable. That counts as implementing in this program. What can we do now to help you move to level 3? You've already met the program standards by being at level 2. Let's see now if we can challenge ourselves, challenge you to get you moved up to level 3 on this particular strategy, and that would be appropriate. So that's really kind of what your role is as far as a coach is concerned, as a facilitator, is to facilitate those kinds of discussions. And it's not the kind of thing where we expect you to go in and schedule these observations with these teachers, but to let them know that you're available as a resource to come in and watch them and then have that conversation afterwards. Are there any questions that you have for me related to that that I can address right now? I'm going to go out on a limb here. I haven't talked to Becky about this. If a teacher wants either Becky or I to come in and do, or Joan as an evaluator come in and do an observation within their classroom, we'd be happy to do that. I would be concerned about any top-down structure on that. Could potentially interfere with a good exchange, because certainly when we show up, that would have more of a sense of a hierarchical kind of relationship. But you know, if teachers wanted us to come in and do that kind of thing, I'd be willing to come and visit. But they need to understand I'm not going to be there in an evaluative purpose. I'm going to be there in a coaching purpose, just like you would be. But I don't want to replace you. I would prefer that their initial efforts be with you, and if you think that it might be helpful to have one of us show up, that'd be fine. But you're really the front line as far as this is concerned, and letting the teachers know how they're doing, and having conversations with them about how it is they might do something in a way that would help them move up the dig, if that seems appropriate. Okay, let's go to ideas about Module 12. You'll be getting a survey about Module 12. We'll be asking you and the teachers for suggestions about what it is you want us to focus on for that. And so watch for that to come out, and encourage your teachers to complete that as rapidly as they can so that Becky and I can make a decision about who's going to put that training together, and what the video structure will look like, and how we'll share that with you and the teachers. And so that's really something we want to be responsive to you on. And it can be based on any of the strategies that we've done up to this point that you think teachers need a little more help on. By the way, one of the things that we have done some filming on the synonym ladder strategy, and we were in one teacher's classroom, and sadly, that video did not work. And so in one of your schools, we've already communicated, it wasn't any of your schools, from the 5 of you, they got a demonstration teacher where we got lots of wonderful still photographs of me doing that particular teaching, but didn't get the video. So we redid that video at a different school. We did a demo on that at a different school with some 6th graders with me doing that teaching, and we're going to be, as soon as we get that, we'll get that posted so that will be available to you and your teachers to take a look at as far as synonym ladders is concerned, and at least one way that you can use synonym ladder. That's all I have for today. Are there any further questions anyone else has? Seeing none, we'll adjourn our training session and look forward to your implementation of Module 11, and please be sure to communicate with me if you have any questions or concerns or comments, and that I can get back to you, and we'll try and be as responsive as possible.